My stepsister tells me at my wedding that my fiancé wants to run away with her, but I called her husband to ask what he thought about it. I am 25 and recently married my fiancé and boyfriend of nearly 7 years, Noah, who is also 25. Our entire family was invited to the wedding, including my stepsister Charlotte, who is 24. Charlotte and I became stepsisters when I was 9 and she was 8 after my mom married her dad. Before that, we already knew each other since our parents had been together for 3 years. We first met when I was 6 and she was 5. Growing up, Charlotte and I got along well. I lived in a quiet neighborhood without many kids, so whenever she and her dad visited, I'd get excited. We'd spend hours playing together, and our bond only grew stronger as we grew older. We had a good relationship, and I considered her a close friend. Even through high school, our relationship remained strong until we started high school, when things began to change between us. It was typical and sad because it happened over a boy, Noah, to be exact. My dad cheated on my mom with a friend of hers while she was pregnant and quickly decided he didn't want anything to do with her or me. After being caught, he gave up his parental rights and left with his girlfriend. They never got married, so she never saw him again. Since my grandparents were fairly well off, my mom decided she didn't even want child support from him because she didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. So I never met my dad and don't know him. My stepdad was pretty much the first father figure I ever had in my life. Charlotte's mom sadly passed away when she was very young due to multiple health problems, which were worsened by pregnancy complications. This led to my mom having full custody of me and Charlotte's dad having full custody of her when they started dating and eventually moved in together. We ended up spending all our time together. She was close to my age, which was great because I had a constant companion. As I mentioned before, Charlotte and I were very close until high school. She had started school earlier than usual, so even though she was a year younger than me, we were in the same grade. We started high school together and had a lot of classes together. That year, Noah's family moved to our town, and he was the newest student at our high school. I liked him almost instantly, and unfortunately, so did Charlotte. He was cute and genuinely sweet. Although we had both dated other boys before, it hadn't mattered much since we were just kids back then. I could tell Charlotte liked him as much as I did, so I decided to talk to her about it. We promised each other that neither of us would pursue or date him out of respect for the other, as we didn't want a boy to come between us. We were just teenagers with a crush on a boy. It wasn't a big deal. We both thought we could get over our little crush on Noah, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. Since the three of us shared many classes, we became good friends. The more I got to know him, the more I liked him. He was everything I wanted in a boy, but I knew what I had promised and kept things strictly platonic. Even though Noah constantly tried to flirt with me, I never reciprocated because I knew I couldn't hurt Charlotte. She and I never talked about him at home or anywhere else because we knew this was a sensitive topic for both of us and didn't want to bring it up between us. That's how things continued until our senior year. Around the time people were asking each other to prom, I was about to say yes to another boy when I found out from Noah that Charlotte had asked him to go to prom with her. He confronted me when I was alone and told me that Charlotte had not only asked him to prom but had also confessed that she had feelings for him and wanted to be more than friends. I was shocked that she would do something like that after promising me she'd never try to get close to him and telling me not to either. It hurt me deeply, but then Noah also told me he had rejected her because he didn't see her as anything more than a friend. Although he always felt she was trying to get closer to him, he never reciprocated. He told me that over the years, since joining the school and becoming our friend, Charlotte had been trying to flirt with him and acted differently around him when they were alone, making it clear she liked him. But he hadn't done anything about it because he liked me. The reason he confronted me and chose to tell me all of this was because although he liked me and kept trying to get me to flirt back, I never did and never showed interest in him. Now that our senior year was about to end and we were heading off to college, he needed an answer because he wanted to know if it was ever going to happen. So he told me to give him a response and let him know if I liked him or not. If not, he'd know where he stood and start thinking about asking other girls to prom. I still remember that day very clearly because it was significant. After the conversation with Noah, I was extremely conflicted because it was a lot to process. Not only had he told me he liked me and had for a long time, but he also revealed that Charlotte had been trying to flirt with him even after promising me she'd never do anything to jeopardize our friendship. This hurt because I really used to consider her nothing less than my sister. After Noah cornered me that day and told me everything, I told him I needed a day to think and would give him an answer the next day. Honestly, I didn't know what to say to him because everything depended on the conversation I'd have with Charlotte. Once I got home that day, I decided to skip the rest of my classes and head home because I didn't want to walk back with her. I felt sick to my stomach after finding out the truth. Once home, I waited for her, and when she arrived, she was so casual about everything, acting as if nothing had happened. She didn't mention anything about Noah or the fact that she had asked him out, despite the many promises we had made to each other. So, I brought it up and decided to confront her and get to the bottom of this. I asked her if it was true that she had asked Noah to prom and confessed her feelings to him. She immediately became defensive and told me it wasn't my business because it was between her and Noah. But you see, it was absolutely my business because she had promised me she wouldn't do anything like that, and it made me promise not to try to be with him either. For a long time, I had been suppressing my feelings for him while she was trying something, and that was incredibly unfair because honestly, I didn't just like Noah, I was pretty sure I was in love with him at that point. It wasn't easy for me to keep ignoring all his advances for the sake of my relationship with Charlotte. I didn't want to hurt her and had prioritized her feelings over mine, only to find out that she wasn't willing to do the same for me. So, when I confronted her, we had a really nasty fight, and I decided I was going to date Noah. It was clear to me that Charlotte didn't care about my feelings at all, and I saw no reason to keep putting her feelings above mine. During our fight, she basically told me she had wanted to avoid breaking my heart by making that promise, as she knew that if it came down to it, Noah would obviously choose her over me. It was extremely arrogant of her to say that, and I was just done with her because she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. The next day, I told Noah everything, absolutely everything, the promise Charlotte and I had made to each other, the fight we had the day before, and he was very understanding about it. He told me he was ready to wait for me if I needed more time to decide, but I told him I was in love with him and couldn't deny it anymore. So we started dating that very day, and it's been 7 beautiful years together. I have no regrets. Of course, we had to cut ties with Charlotte and didn't speak to her again after that day. It was much easier for him, but it was different for me because I actually lived with her. We used to share a room, but after our fight and after I started dating Noah, she moved into the basement so we could live separately, and I had no complaints about that. Our parents asked us several times what had gone wrong, but I never told them anything, and I don't think Charlotte did either. We just stopped talking after that day, and it was hard at first, but we got used to it. Noah and I ended up going to the same college, and Charlotte chose one on the other side of the country, so I didn't have to see her for the next few years, and we'd only run into each other during holidays. After graduating from college, Noah and I moved on, and Charlotte started dating a guy from her college as well. We all started working soon after, and our fight started to feel like something out of a high school TV drama because it was just silly and didn't matter anymore. Charlotte and I would see each other at family gatherings, and while we never consciously tried to talk like we did as kids, we started being civil with each other, and at least greeted each other as family. We stuck to small talk and safe topics, nothing more. So, things started changing, and at least we were on speaking terms as we grew into adulthood. Then, last year, she announced her engagement to her college boyfriend, and I congratulated her. It was very formal, and she told me she'd love to have me at the wedding. It was bittersweet because when we were kids, we'd always be each other's maid of honor whenever we had pretend weddings. But when I attended her wedding, I was just a guest. So, I guess I was happy we were finally acting like adults and mending things, but also a little sad that things would never go back to the way they used to be. We had been on speaking terms since then, and she even seemed okay with Noah. Of course, I had the good sense not to bring him to her wedding as my date because it would have been a little weird and insensitive, even though she had completely moved on and was really getting married to someone else. But sure enough, she noticed. When we were talking and socializing after the ceremony, she told me I could have brought Noah with me because she had moved on and didn't care anymore, as it was all in the past. But I guess I shouldn't have believed her, because what happened recently was proof that she hadn't moved on one bit and was still a massive jerk. A couple of months ago, Noah proposed to me, and of course, I said yes because the timing was perfect. I had just been promoted at work, and I had left my job to join my friend in her startup, both amazing things. I was looking forward to a stress-free, drama-free wedding, but I guess I shouldn't have invited Charlotte if I wanted that. She congratulated me when I got engaged, and that was it. I thought things were fine. I invited her to the wedding, and she accepted the invitation. There was no way I could have expected anything to go wrong, but last week on my wedding day, Charlotte decided she was going to make one last attempt to ruin my relationship. Noah and I were getting married at a hotel a bit outside the city, and most of our close friends and family stayed at the hotel with us. The two of us, along with our parents, bridesmaids, and groomsmen, arrived 2 days earlier, while other family members, friends, and out-of-town guests arrived a day before the wedding. Charlotte and her husband were supposed to arrive the day before the wedding but showed up on the same day as us, which confused us a little. But they made it seem like an honest mistake, and fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, the hotel had some vacant rooms, so it worked out for them. I truly believe Charlotte had made an honest mistake and didn't think much of it because I had no idea what she was planning. But on my wedding day, I finally understood what she was trying to do. I was getting my makeup done and everything when I noticed she kept looking out of my room, and I thought it was a bit strange because guests were supposed to be in their rooms or just having fun. After all, we had reserved a significant portion of the hotel we were staying at, and everyone was free to do whatever they wanted until it was time for the ceremony. So, for her to leave all that and loiter outside my room was a bit weird, especially since she wasn't a bridesmaid or my mom. Once I was ready, my bridesmaids and my mom went to their rooms to get dressed and do their makeup. There was only an hour left before the ceremony was supposed to begin, and since they didn't need much time to get ready, I thought we'd have enough time to get to the venue on time. So, I decided to take a little walk down the hallway outside my room to calm myself. I couldn't leave that floor or go anywhere else because I didn't want anyone else to see me in my wedding dress. But just then, Charlotte caught me outside my room and pulled me aside, saying she wanted to talk about something very important. I had no idea what this could be about because she and I, although we were on speaking terms, hadn't had any intimate or personal conversations. So this was a bit strange, but I let her talk out of curiosity. Then she started telling me that she had arrived at the hotel a day earlier than planned. Not by accident, but on purpose because apparently Noah had asked her to. She said she had come only because he had asked her to, but she had no idea why he wanted her to arrive early, so he could supposedly ask her to run away with him. She told me an absurd story about how Noah had contacted her about 2 weeks before the wedding, saying he was having doubts and was afraid he was making a mistake by marrying me because, although a lot of time had passed, he had finally come to terms with the fact that he wasn't in love with me anymore but had fallen for her. She claimed they had been in contact behind my back for a long time, but it had all been platonic. However, he had fallen in love with her and had asked her to come early, so they could elope. He had been pressuring her to agree to his reckless plans since she arrived at the hotel because he didn't feel brave enough to talk to me about it. He feared I might do something crazy and didn't want to be responsible for it or even be near me when it happened. But apparently, my dear Charlotte couldn't do this to me and felt she had to be honest with me. So, she, like a normal person, had chosen an hour before my wedding to confess this big thing to me. Obviously, I was fully aware that she was blatantly lying about all of this because I trusted Noah and knew he would never do something like that. Moreover, he was a very straightforward and candid guy, and if he had something to say, he would just say it to my face rather than go behind my back. He and I weren't cowards who avoided problems. This story Charlotte was telling me seemed pretty far-fetched, which made me realize she was lying. It was exasperating because she pretended to be coming from a place of concern and that she cared about me and my relationship, but I knew she was actively trying to create drama when there was nothing happening, just to ruin my wedding. So I decided to stoop even lower and call her husband in front of her. I didn't have his phone number, but I followed him on Instagram, so that's where I made the call. I was pretending to be devastated and was standing in front of Charlotte, so she couldn't see exactly what I was doing on my phone. But she didn't stop me because she assumed I was probably going to call Noah to confront him or even break up with him, which was what she wanted. But she had no idea I was actually calling her husband, who was elsewhere in the hotel. Thankfully, he answered my call. I repeated everything Charlotte had just told me, asking if it was true, and she didn't say a word because she still thought I was probably talking to Noah. I don't even know what she was planning because a look through his text messages and emails would tell me the truth, so I had no idea what her game was here. But anyway, after I finished talking, I decided to put my phone on speaker so Charlotte could also hear her husband's response. Sure enough, her husband was shocked to hear all of this and said he would come back to their room immediately. When Charlotte heard her husband's voice on the phone instead of Noah's, she completely lost it and started yelling at me. She said I was deliberately trying to sabotage her marriage, and I simply told her I was doing exactly what she was trying to do to me. Then I walked back into my room. I told my bridesmaids what had happened and said they needed to make sure she didn't show up at the wedding or during the ceremony because I didn't trust her and wanted her gone. But it turns out I had nothing to worry about because the ceremony went off without a hitch, and Charlotte didn't even try to interrupt anything by showing up. I guess she was too busy trying to fix things with her husband after the stunt she had pulled, and no one at the wedding even noticed. She wasn't there except for our parents. After the ceremony, When they asked me where Charlotte was, I told them I'd explain later but had no intention of telling them because it wasn't important to me. After everything was over, I contacted the hotel staff to ask what had become of Charlotte's room, and to my satisfaction, they told me she had checked out during the wedding and left. No one mentioned anything after the wedding, and I was glad because I just wanted to enjoy being a newlywed without having to talk about Charlotte and her stupid stunt. I did tell Noah about it and we laughed afterward, but that was it. However, it's been a week since then, and 2 days ago, we found out Charlotte and her husband were separating. It was our parents who informed me, saying her husband had apparently called them and yelled at them about how terrible Charlotte was. He told them they had to come get her because he refused to let her stay at his house, and if she didn't leave, he'd call the police. So, they had to pick her up and found out they were separating because her husband found it deeply insulting that Charlotte had intentionally arrived at the wedding venue early to sabotage me. He had heard the whole story from me and, for a long time, had been hearing about how amazing Noah was and how Charlotte should have been the one to end up with him, according to her friends who are clearly very stupid. He couldn't take it anymore because it was very obvious she still had feelings for him, which was why she was trying to ruin my wedding. That was pretty much the last straw for him, and he decided he was going to end the marriage because no matter how much she insisted she was in love with someone else and couldn't deny it anymore, they're getting a divorce. I don't know why, but my parents think this is my fault and are blaming me for it. They think that despite what Charlotte had tried to do, I should have kept her marriage and husband out of it because by involving him and calling him, I ruined their marriage. So now they expect me to apologize to her, and they're refusing to speak to me because I said I wouldn't do it. I literally don't understand how this is my fault because I didn't ask Charlotte to do something so psychotic. All I did was hit her where it hurt because she tried to do the same to me first. That's all I did. And I think it's very unfair that they're blaming me for this. She ruined her own marriage, and I had nothing to do with it. Noah feels the same way, but my parents and some of our mutual friends with Charlotte are on her side, and that's messing with my mind right now. I don't regret involving my stepsister's husband when she tried to sabotage my wedding on purpose by lying about my husband.